Arlander Ronnie Cole, what impact did Jonestown have on you?
We'll start at the moment I saw it on TV that morning when it was broadcast, and we were being informed as to some of the hellacious things that were going on there, aside from the juices being drank. But it wasn't a mass suicide. It was a forced mass suicide. So there was premeditation all along about the situation. And it's tragic that my people got engulfed in it. Arlander Cole Sr. and Arvella Cole were my grandparents. The impact was I carried a lot of unresolved, misplaced anger. I couldn't look at that as something to be forgiven, but to be remembered. The only issue about it is I didn't know where to look for anybody, and I didn't know what to say. So I carried this around for 40 years. But the impact goes like this. By 1979, I had attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and a gun allegation, a direct result of all my unresolved anger. And I took that on a rampage all across the country with APBs, etc. I took a hateful notion of that, and it almost destroyed me, not only in my emotion, but my body was, what did they say? They say stress kills. But now here's the whole idea of this. I didn't know what that anger was about until I returned to San Francisco. I came here to bury 4 or 5 of my relatives, my great auntie, my cousins, and just recently another cousin. So that's a lot of unresolved murders and stuff. That's a lot of unresolved pain. And that's a lot of anger that I carried for 41 years. I just began understanding the whole notion of art therapy. I just began understanding the notion of that I must speak out and hear others, because no one was talking about it.
Yeah, no, so how old were you in 1978 when?
Well, I'm 71 now. You do the math. I can't remember. I think it was in my 30s, somewhere in my 30s.
And you mentioned your grandma and your grandpa, your grandpa Arlander, your grandma is it Arvella?
Yes.
And they were in Jonestown, and they died in Jonestown, and we'll talk about that. You talk about the anger. So this may seem like a dumb question, but what was it that made you angry? Because you just said in what you were saying.
Because it's like this. My grandparents went to Guyana seeking peace and relief, and this whole idea of eternity, or not eternity, but this whole idea of a utopia, a spiritual haven and utopia in her. It was so blown up that people started selling, they sold their property. I don't know what they did with their SSI money. I don't know what happened or became of that whole scenario. But at the tail end, they did another migration to their murder. See, and what that did for me, it made me very hostile.
Because of the sense that they had the best motivations.
Their intentions were more than honorable.
But
they were people in their 80s and 90s.
Wow.
In their 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
See, so it was like they lived some of their life. They raised grandchildren. They got great grandbabies. I can't count them all because I have 2 families.
Yeah.
But it's like I sense that San Francisco and many of its natives are still harboring all type of emotions that haven't been resolved.
Emotions related to Jonestown and People's Temple?
Related to Jonestown in particular, but related to San Francisco especially. Now here's we'll say, a look at it from another perspective of others. It seems that during their period, there was a lot of political and social and economic displacement. Redevelopment was moving San Franciscans out of their houses. HUD was buying up all the property and passing it on to visitors from New York or just property speculators. But these were havens for us. My grandparents' house was a haven for 4, 3, 6, 7, 8 generations of Cole. So I can't begin to tell how many people have voiced their concern after all this time. We did a program in the mini park for the Juneteenth resurrection, and I personally met at least 15 people that came in and shared who it was, their aunties, their cousins, their little niece, etc. And it was surprising that I had all these people walking around me, and we had the same destiny in terms of our beloved's death. So with that, we drew a large remembrance card. And with that, we created an altar, but we never got a chance to light the candles because we didn't have the event at night. So that lay dormant for about 2 years until the new Community Leadership Foundation, until Yolanda Williams came in, until Dr. Taylor came in, and then all of a sudden we got 11, 12, 14 people that were directly affected by this. And we are sharing that with many.
Yeah, these are folks you're talking about that you've interacted with, and you discovered in interacting with them that they also had connections to Jonestown.
We all.
Yeah.
That the city paid for it. Yeah. How many military people did we send down there?
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the military paid for it. The city of San Francisco, we paid dearly. We lost some valuable jewels in this life over this murder. This is what we call, I look at it like this. You can be an activist, political participant, a voting participant, a teaching participant, or you can sit on the sideline and be a major critic in that foolishness. We're good to point our fingers, but when are we going to say, what about me? How do I feel about this? You know, having 2 double bypass surgeries is not easy to endure. I'm blessed to be alive. That's how much toxicity I carried in me for a long time.
And this toxicity, you relate you relate a lot of it to just this experience in Jonestown.
This experience and how the people were misled and abused.
Yeah.
Before the killing and in the event, I'm talking about 10, 15 years. I'm talking about there was sexual abuse. There was abuse of babies and children. There were men forced to watch their wives have sex with part of Jones's army and stuff. I didn't know all this stuff, it existed.
Wow.
That is very insidious.
Oh yeah. These are things that were happening in People's Temple.
I didn't know about it, but it was.
Yeah. Did you ever visit People's Temple yourself?
I never went there. I wasn't even in Sam, I wasn't even in California. I think it was down in Denver, up in Denver doing
Oh, okay.
or after.
Yeah. But how long were your grandma and grandpa involved in People's Temple?
I have no idea. I got a letter one day, and my grandfather wrote, "Bye, baby, I'm going to Guyana." So I looked. I said,
"Had you ever heard of Guyana before?"
I never had. Never.
Yeah.
I didn't know where Guyana was until he told me, and then I went and looked on the map. I said, "Wow, my grandpa's in South America." I thought everything was okie dokie, but it wasn't.
Wow.
These people's phones were being tapped. These people's license plates numbers were being solicited.
Yeah.
They got information from these people's friends, and then they'd act like in the church. Jim Jones said, "There's a person up in here that has got cancer. We are coming forth to remove it." Maybe he took a piece of liver. They were playing all kind of games.
Yeah.
And I thought, I didn't think you had to be that spiritually and religiously astute, but I found out I'm one of the best students of the Bible there is in the world, but my intentions were wrong. That's why I didn't move on that insanity.
What do you think? Because you're describing these things. What response do you have when people say that all of that is true, but at the same time there was something beautiful about the movement and about Jonestown? I mean, how do you make sense of that?
You know what? I can agree with you wholly, because I've heard stories where they would go up at a campsite and people were going in masses, from what I understand, of every ethnicity you can imagine, and being a part of his church services when they up. I think it was Ukiah. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but they would have retreats up in the hills and around the beautiful scenery of California.
Yeah.
So then there was some beautiful songs that I hear that the children's choir were like angels singing.
Yeah.
And that for me is very healthy. But how it got to that other side, don't even ask me. I'm clueless.
No, I think that's the big mystery. Now, but before we started recording, you told me a story. It kind of illustrates the sense of anger you had about something you prayed. Are you willing to tell us about that?
Yeah, I was so enraged that I prayed to God to be allowed to go into hell and assassinate the devil and Jim Jones especially.
Wow. Yeah.
And then my most recent prayer in anger, but with sensibility, is that we have Jim Jones's tombstone removed from the Oakland Memorial. That's like, for me, stepping on the whole notion of my grandfather. And I put that, why would they allow this man's tomb, the killer's tombstone, to be in this mass grave like this? And I hear that Jim Jones Jr. spent $45,000. And to me also, that's like putting a statue of Hitler in front of Temple Emmanuel here in San Francisco on Arguello Street. That's what it's tantamount to me. And it's a blatant disrespect that we would regard the wishes of one family member over the wishes of 912 people is ridiculous for me. I can't even fathom that. I'm ill at ease with that as of this moment.
I hear you. There's you're referring to this controversy at the memorial in Oakland.
Yeah.
They've got the names there, but it includes Jim Jones's name, and
that was a $45,000 headstone that he raised to have.
Yeah. Do you know, I mean, now is it, last I knew, I saw a report that it was covered. Is it still covered? His name?
I have no idea. If it's covered, that's fine with me. I can be at peace with that little petty pet peeve. My main pet peeve that we haven't been doing this event. We honor Mayor Moscone, one man. We honor Harvey Milk, one man, every year. And from my understanding, it's been going on about 40 years. But yet here are 912 African Americans. Nobody says a hoot about anything. And that's tragic.
So you're saying, before we started recording, you're saying that, I mean, one of the things you're doing with this energy you have, you know, that's, you know, you described it as anger, but now it sounds like you're wanting to do something else positive with this energy, is to have an annual, remember, so I know at the 40th, you know, at the the 40th, there was an event, but you want, every year you want there to be some memorial.
Right, some type of engagement and activity centered around that.
Yeah. And you also, you want this to be taught in the schools as well, right?
Particularly in the schools. I want to help safeguard our young children and our old folks' mindset, their mentality. They weren't prepared for this. They were not prepared for this. And another thing is, there should always be a manner in which we can have a healthy spirituality. There should always be a remembrance. Just as easily as we sing, "We shall overcome," we should be able to have a floor mat where everybody's aware of this. I want every person that comes to San Francisco or knows about San Francisco to remember Arlander Ronnie Cole said that we should remember this. This is some valid history. This is like a study of studying cults. This is like a study on being prepared for monsters. And there's a whole methodology of, when you see this type of behavior, this is what you should expect. There's some demigods acting as holy leaders, and they're not fit for a pulpit.
I hear you. Do you think, I mean, what's your suggested approach? Like, would it be useful to say, look, we're going to talk about People's Temple, and we're going to, you know, part one is on the attractive stuff. I mean, the stuff that attracted your grandparents, you know, that's part one. And then part two is, you know, how did it end up the way it ended up? That's one approach. One approach is another approach is just to say, look, this whole thing was a mess. What would be your approach to talking about People's Temple in Jonestown?
My approach is, let's dump all that vindictiveness stuff. Let's dump all that, and let's consider these people were up there carving, doing some beautiful painting, having praise dances, and we have already put in place mechanism. We are already sharing the incident by Yolanda Williams on cults. She's sharing that piece. We already have a political understanding where Dr. Taylor is breaking down the history of it. We already have praise dancers in place. We already have singers in place. We already have poets in place. And all the artists, we are harmonizing from a multiplicity of things. We are teaching discipline and through martial arts, how not to misuse your anger, but redirect it. I like to say codify, reposition it. I'm an artist. I'm a master of three-dimensional art, two-dimensional art. So I redirect on a daily basis. I redirect that energy in something healthy. And I feel more at ease.
Sure. When did you realize, I'm guessing when you're young, maybe you're not making the connection. When did you realize that this anger that was driving you to do all sorts of destructive things, that it had a lot to do with Jonestown? Was there a particular moment when you realized it was Jonestown eating?
A week after. And then it finally dawned on me, this is where the stuff is coming from, this unresolved, I call it unresolved anger.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started taking on healthy ideas, taking on healthy methodologies and approaches, I've been at peace. I be at peace making canes for senior citizens. I have a natural proclivity for art on many dimensions. So that's what I do. Instead of destroying, instead of killing, I'm into the business of healing.
Now, so just so I understand that you recognize almost immediately that the Jonestown thing was the trigger.
It was the major trigger.
But how long did it take you until you were finally able to take a turn?
Okay, my journey of transformation, my total journey of transformation began in 1979.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I picked up a pen and pencil and I haven't stopped. So that's how I resolved it. Others use other methodologies.
So it was to it. So kind of the violent reaction was pretty brief then.
Yeah, but I didn't like it.
No, I hear you.
I don't know how all these people walk around with that kind of emotion. I don't even care to know. I'm staying away from that toxicity.
Was part of the challenge for you that, if you told somebody that, there was a Jonestown connection, that they would, you would kind of get that look yourself, like, oh, there must be something wrong with you because you're related to some of those people down there. Was that a little bit of a challenge too, talking about it?
No, but what was the challenge? Finding out many of the people that were directly, that were survivors of it, turn around and tell me that they had a paranoia that if they say anything about it, that maybe a murder squad was going to come get. People were silenced out of fear, whether that be fear true or false. They told me their stories. I say, what? It was that bad with you? How did you make it out? And Yolanda Williams told me how she made it, how she did it, which encouraged me a long way.
Yeah. Did you feel comfortable talking about Jonestown?
I'll tell you like this. This is how I felt. Have you heard of the story of Jonah and the whale?
Oh yeah, sure.
And him being in the belly of the whale is centered around him not going into Nineveh and preaching.
Sure.
That's the premise of the whole story.
Yeah.
That's the analogy, that he wouldn't go preach.
Right.
Well, it's like when I came, and I'm using San Francisco as the Nineveh. When I came back to San Francisco, I didn't want to say this, but I feel like Jonah coming out the well, preaching unto the congregation, preaching unto the world that we don't have to be killers, even though the Bible says Cain and Abel were murderers. We have examples of we don't have to do it. There's alternatives to that.
And
that's not just limited to the Jonestown incident. Violence everywhere, in particular San Francisco.
Yeah. So are you maybe, you don't ever, I don't know, there's this idea everything happens for a reason. I'm not sure about that, personally, but one of the, maybe one of the things that can come out of this Jonestown disaster for you is that it got you thinking about this particular topic, got you talking about this topic, and maybe encouraging other people to think about violence and how they carry themselves.
Now,
Is that part of it?
that, yeah. You know, a true warrior, a true soldier is disciplined in the use of their weapons, right or wrong, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
True soldiers. They're responsible with their weapons.
Yeah.
We have generations of people out here that you give them a gun and they just go crazy, power hungry, crazy. This false power, this false feeling, gives them the sense of being someone. This false notion of in the neighborhood talking about I'm a gangster and I'm a thug, woo wop to whip. It's false.
Jim Jones is
Hollywood media idiocy, and we're feeding into it like it's a thing to do. I walk down the street and hear 6-year-old kids talking about shooting somebody. I'm gonna get you with my pistol, bang bang. And I'm like, what the world? Here's a 10-year-old child talking that way. We got work to do. We're gonna have to prune some flowers and do some the pruning of this garden. This garden ain't feeling like it's a garden.
Yeah, Jim Jones's power trip led to destruction.
There you go.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Power trips. Power trips. Let me ask you about something, as we start to wind down. You said at the outset, one of the questions that comes up, when we think about Jonestown murder, suicide, when we think about your grandparents, how old were your grandparents in 1978?
Ooh, we're talking about 30. My granddad must have been about 79, 80.
Okay, so I mean, I think in the case of folks that old, and then folks babies, then we're talking about people who didn't really have much of a choice, right? Certainly, the babies obviously didn't have a choice.
And
one of the questions that comes up is when we're talking about, say, those who do have a choice, is it murder, suicide?
Right.
And it seems like you kind of fall on the thing that this wasn't mass suicide, this was mass murder. Is that right?
Exactly. That's what I want everybody to know. Those weren't dumb, ignorant people. There was guns upon them. I'd be surprised to see what a gun drawn, pulled in my face, what I would do. I don't know. I probably try to never mind. But anyway, force and violence, the vanquished are forced to do all kinds of stuff. And that was not an agreed thing for people to decide on. Drinking this juice and we're going to go to paradise. That wasn't a jihad, where they think that if they could commit suicide, they're going into heaven and all that kind of. It was none of that type of stuff. No. It was a gun. Plenty guns, and a private military. The man had a whole private killing squad right there with him. What did they do to Congressman Ryan?
Yeah.
Do we hear about that anymore?
I mean, no. Unfortunately, most of my students, college students, most of them haven't heard of Jonestown now. I mean, I'm worried the story's being lost,
Well, I'm here to say we're going to light these candles and bring it. We'll bring it to them.
Yeah.
With people like us around, we can bring this whole nation to it. We can bring them all to the classroom.
Got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Well, let me just leave the last word with you. I mean, when this went down, when November 18th, 1978 went down, well, just real quick, last question. I'll ask you this and then we'll wrap it up. What is your memory? I mean, you knew that your grandma and grandpa were in Guyana. And then when was that moment that you realized that something had gone down in Guyana and that grandma and grandpa were part of it? How did that news come to you?
By television.
Yeah.
They televised it all day. And it still hadn't settled in. I was just there and just stuck at the TV in a daze first. It took a few days for this to really sink in.
Because it seemed so crazy?
It was too heavy for me to fathom at that moment. I'm in shock. Basically, I was numb, sitting there, TV all day. I don't think I got out of bed or talked to anybody beyond my mate about it. I called my mother and everybody the next day, and they confirmed to me that everything being said is true. I didn't want to believe it, but,
Wow.
It occurred. And we can do some beautiful things out of the tragedy. We can have triumph and victory out of this tragedy. It's almost like the phoenix rising out of the ashes, so to speak. That's where we're at today.
Well, that's what your mission is right now.
That's my goal, mission, prayers, strategies, approaches, etc. And any assistance that you may need, we would love to have you on board, because this is a big bus.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I'll tell you what, to finish up this conversation, let me just leave it with you, man. What's your word to folks when you think about this whole situation? You think about, your grandma and grandpa did not say, let's go to Guyana so we could drink cyanide.
Right.
Not what they did. They went down there because they had some vision, and they went down there with 900 other people. You got that. And then you got what you end up with November 18th. And then you got the impact it has on you. And then we fast forward 41 years, and here we are still talking about it.
Yes. And that's a good thing, finally.
Yeah. Put that together. What's your word? What do you want people to know when they think about this topic of Jonestown, People's Temple?
That the African Americans of San Francisco are dealing with this, that we are no longer going to forget it. And we apologize for taking so long. It's like the analogy of we were in the wilderness 40 years, but now we're out in the wilderness on its 41st year. And we wish all of you the best ideas that you have, that you become assistants. Because this is a large, large responsibility. One person cannot undertake this.
The responsibility of keeping the story alive, keeping the memory alive.
There you go.
I hear you.
You got it.
I hear you. Well, Arlander Ronnie Cole, I really want to thank you for taking this time to share your thoughts and share your memories. I appreciate it. We're on the same team.
Well, thank you, Preston. That sounds encouraging.
My goal is to get as many stories as possible recorded while we have time. And
that's
so
good. That's a good mission.
We're on the same team, man.
Yeah.
So I want to wish you all the best. Thank you very much for taking this time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Preston. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
And tell our military we love them too.
I will, for sure. Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye-bye.